Hello and welcome back to the 1904 Club, the Hull City podcast from the Hull Daily Mail. So we'll start off with Happy Christmas and all that and Happy New Year. And for those of us that went to Blackburn yesterday, it was an absolute pleasure because City were 1-0 winners. First away win since, the 1st of October at QPR. First clean sheet in 127 days, dating back to the 24th of August against Millwall. City out of the bottom three. Lots to talk about. I'm joined this morning by Burnsy and Fletch. Burnsy, top of the morning. How are we?
Morning. I'm good, thank you. Really encouraging result, really, because not many people would have fancied them to get a result at Blackburn, and that gives you hope coming out of 24, going into 25. So we'll see. What is it? 21 games without a clean sheet. So they've done it, or in the 21st game. So credit to them. And it was dogged, wasn't it? And determined and organised. And I think when the goal went in, there was an element of looking up smash and grab in the dictionary, but they could have actually won it by 2 or 3, couldn't they, in the end?
Yeah, I think they could have done. We'll come to you in a second, dear Fletch. But yeah, what I liked about it was they, and Ruben has said this time and time again, that if and when they get in front, and it's now becoming a semi-regular theme under the new manager, that they do score the first goal. That they're not one of these teams that we see so often and naturally in football, especially away from home, where you go 1-0 in front, particularly late on, and you naturally sort of sink back into your own penalty box to defend, and you come under pressure, and it gets a bit nervy, and the potential for conceding a goal is huge. But they did play on the front foot. They went after them. Ryan Longman scored, I think it was the 77th minute. And after that, they had a goal disallowed. Puerta hit the post. We'll come on to him in a minute. I thought he was brilliant again. But yeah, Puerta hit the post. There was other moments. Ryan Longman had a shot that was really well saved by Ainsley Pears in the Blackburn Rovers goal. And look, they had to ride their luck at times. But give me pretty much any team in the Championship away from home is going to have to ride their luck at any point in any game, particularly away from home. And I think, you factor in that City are in the bottom three, all the goals they've conceded, all the lack of clean sheets, everything that is not in their favour. Of course, they were going to ride their luck, and Blackburn did miss Owen Beck and Todd Cantwell second half, especially missed a couple of really good chances. But that said, the goalkeeper pandered, didn't really make. I'm struggling to think of a genuine save that he had to make that he was put at full stretch. So I did actually think he made one in stoppage time. But it was a brilliant block by Alfie Jones, who was sensational yesterday, an absolute colossus in the heart of the back four, given the skipper's armband with Louis Coyle rested to the bench. So yeah, look, they rode their luck. You need it. They've not had much luck all season. We've talked about that. And they scored a goal away from home. I don't really care how it came, whether it was smash or grab or it wasn't. The fact is they've run away from home, and that's 2 wins in 3 now. And I think we can. After what's been a rubbish year for the most part, I think we can dare to look slightly optimistically into the new year under the new manager, Fletch.
Yeah, morning all. I think.
Hiya.
Hello, and an early Happy New Year. I don't think we'll be doing one beforehand, will we? 7 points from 5 games for Ruben Sayers. I think that's a nice return, isn't it, in the circumstances? 2 wins, a draw and 2 defeats. Should never blow my own trumpet, but I was talking last time, wasn't I, about needing to be gritty and determined and not, trying to smash a team off the park and to get what you need. And that's what they did, wasn't it? I think they showed some guile. I think they showed at times flourishes of what they could do over 90 minutes. You mentioned Puerta there, Baz. I think Puerta in the last few weeks is getting stronger and stronger in the midfield. And I think he and Slater seem to be bubbling away that might be getting on the score sheet sometime soon, because they love getting forward and they look a lot more solid than they did before. Alfie Jones, as you say, was a colossus, and I was very critical before the game when I saw the team sheet. I put a post out to say that this back four is going to come under a lot of scrutiny if it all goes wrong. When you have Jacob, McLaughlin, Jones and Drame across the back, they rolled the dice, took the captain out, and it paid off. And they got that first clean sheet in 21 games, and they were one off equaling their all-time record. So they've managed to banish that to the history books. and going into 2025, they've got a little bit of a bounce.
Yeah, I would agree. Go on. Sorry, Bernsey, go on.
I was going to say that explains a tweet to the 1904 club from Tiger Base Matt on the clean sheets, almost a club record. So well done to avoiding that. And the previous clean sheet, weren't McLaughlin and Jones the two centre halves then?
Against Bristol
Somebody
City.
tweeted me that last night.
Yeah. I think I was a bit concerned at times in the first half. Once again, and we've talked about this before about City, their fullbacks, not playing particularly well in recent weeks, and how we saw it at Coventry, didn't we? That Ruben wanted to push Coventry through the middle because he knew their wingers, particularly with Ephron, Mason Clark, were very good, and we saw it in the first.
He's gone, Fletch.
Heck.
Right, and he's
right. We're playing past the parcel on the 1904 club, and the dodgy router gets passed to each of us every single time.
Oh, is it gone? Have I gone?
Yep. You're back
yeah,
now,
we saw Koza give Coyle a bit of a torrid time.
Yeah, you're better now.
What's happened? Have we got technical problems? Have we got gremlins?
No, you're all right now, Baz. Don't worry about it. We'll gloss over it, and then in the vastly expensive edit suite at Hull Daily Mail Towers.
I can see you all. What's happening?
No, you're fine now. Don't worry about it. You had a temporary
You're all
blip.
right, Baz. Calm down.
Don't worry about it. So
have
it's
a Bailey.
okay.
Sit in the corner.
Anyway,
no, not for me. We're back. I was saying that before whatever happened before the mice got in the system again. That we've seen it. City's problems in defending their flanks at times in recent weeks, and Cozy Dewberry was very good yesterday against Jacob, but then Louis Coyle came off the bench, completely shut him down. And look, they didn't get a shot. They didn't really get a shot of note on the target. Yeah, okay, yes. Campbell and Beck missed. That Campbell chance was a really big one. From 6 or 7 yards out, left side of goal, and he should hit the target. But they need to ride the luck, and you need that bit of. As I say, they've not had it all season. 20 in the 23 previous games, you can count on one hand how many times it's gone in their favour, and it isn't many. And they deserved it for me. They deserved that bit of. There wasn't a huge amount in the game. Blackburn probably edged the first half, but City were not without their own moments. And that final, there was a classic. I don't know if you saw it, but there was a phenomenal moment which was so funny in the first half, which kind of summed up 2024 in many ways. That City were attacking, and it looked like a really promising attack. But João Pedro had been knocked to the deck in the D, and I think he was face down in the Ewood Park turf. Kamara had got the ball on the right hand side, and you're like, go on then. And he passes it straight at Pedro, and it hits Pedro, who's lying prostrate on the floor. Bizarrely, then the referee then stops play to allow Pedro to sort himself out, and then gives Hull City the ball back, which completely angered the 15,000 or so Blackburn fans around that were in the ground. And City ended up having the ball back, which was the most bizarre moment. And it was kind of encapsulated in a comedic sense that how things have gone for City recently, that João Pedro was on the deck, face first in the turf, and Abu Kamara still passed to him.
Maybe he'd spotted the potential for the lowest ever diving header. I don't know. On the subject of Kamara, from Jonathan Douglas to the 1904 Club on Twitter, saw it out comfortably and could have doubled our money in the last 10 with a bit of luck. Kamara had one of his best games for City, backtracking and threatening going forward. If he can do that every week, we'll have a player to justify the outlay. I've said all along, I think there's a player in there. We haven't necessarily seen the best of him, and I'm sure we've still not seen the best of him. But I think there's a player in there. So hopefully the new manager will get something out of him, and he'll continue to improve as you would hope that the team continue to improve. Baz?
Yeah, I haven't. I'll start this by saying I haven't seen it, the replay at all. I've only seen it in real time. But there was a suggestion that his goal yesterday was actually onside. Now, I asked Ruben Sayers about it, and he wasn't sure. He sort of intimated from the angle that he'd seen from the analyst that João Pedro's header back, it looked offside, but that was from the one angle that Ruben has seen it from. there was a few other members of the to be fair, the Rovers press corps that suggested that actually João Pedro was in fact onside when he nodded it back to Kamara, who then really nicely slotted it in the opposite top corner. But I agree. I thought Kamara was better yesterday. Particularly funny thing. I mean, naturally, goals change games, don't they? And goals change. They give momentum and confidence to teams. And City were purring once they scored that goal. We saw it earlier in the season at times when they scored that it changed them, but not in necessarily a positive way. And they would then go back and become. And we saw it a lot last season that they'd score and then they'd just sit back and they'd go, right, okay, you have the ball, and they'd do everything opposite to what they'd done before that got them in the lead, which was really so inherently frustrating. But what I liked, as I touched on at the top, what I liked yesterday was they kept going forward and it gave them a real burst of energy. And Kamara was a player I thought that after Longman scored what was a really good finish, although in my head it took an age for him to take it down and then score. But then, yeah, Kamara seemed to really flourish after that. And look, he's a confidence player. It's taking time. And look, I think it is worth pointing out, just for the record again, that transfers aren't an exact science, and players are human. And we all have this ideology that you're going to sign a player, he's going to come to the club, he's going to hit the ground running, he's going to score 15 goals and create 25 assists, and you're going to see the best of. You're going to see Abu Kamara playing like Jadon Philogene did at times last season. Well, they're different players. Kamara is a totally different situation. And it just takes longer for players to settle than you would like or they would like. And I think Kamara's been a victim of the kind of the chaos at Hull City, the previous manager's approach, his man management style, his training schedule, the way things were. And I think Kamara has been a victim of that. And he struggled with his confidence. He's been playing in a team that have lacked confidence, have lacked an identity, lacked so many different things. And I was speaking to a member of the coaching staff yesterday, and they're saying that it is taking time for those habits and that way of working to be coached back out of the players, that they were so set in the ways that Tim Walter built into them that Ruben is working really hard with his staff. But it is taking time for them to get it out of their system. And, results like yesterday will only help that process speed up. But unfortunately, they are only human beings like the rest of us. And it is just going to take a little bit of time.
Fletch?
Like that. Yeah, I think to add to that, I think when you talk about Kamara and Longman specifically when they're playing wide, two things. First of all, the tactics of the goal. What I like about them is the occupancy they give to the fullbacks to allow they are still like Tim Walter, they're still travelling wide down the side of the pitch. But the difference is, in comparison to Walter's style of play, is they then move it into the middle. And you see those two passes, which leaves Longman completely unmarked inside the penalty area to slot home. And I think they did really well to actually move that Blackburn shape across, so far across, but then move the ball into the middle before going down a dead alley, which I think under Tim's style, there was such a necessity to get it as wide as possible, as far up the pitch as possible, and then swing the ball in. And I think what they did with that goal was very, very well. Nice little flicks. And I think players like Longman and Kamara, you have to get the balance right in terms of players that need something to happen to give them more confidence in matches, and players who can dig you out of a hole when it's not going your way. Now, for me, Longman and Kamara are those players where, as when you go 1-0 up, they start to flourish and blossom even further because there's not much risk on the game in terms of trying to get 3 points. But then there's other players who can then step up and actually do that hard work, that industry in the midfield, in the defence, which takes the pressure off them.
They're confidence players, but they have to do it consistently. And that goes for the team as a whole. They have to do this consistently. It's a bit seesaw at the moment, up with one win, down when they don't perform. Can they string 2 games together, starting with Middlesbrough on Wednesday on New Year's Day? Can they find that consistency? Hopefully they can, because then they'll get out of it. They still need, I reckon, a point a game.
Yeah, and
in the 22 games left to get a point a game plus 1 or 2 really to get out. But they have to find that consistency. Can I just say before you two both want a word on that? I thought the manager got it spot on yesterday. I thought he picked the right team by the looks of it. He recognised the needs that maybe some players had dipped off form, dipped off consistency. He was right to leave Longman on the bench, and he was right to bring him on, and he got a reward for that. I thought he picked the right team. His subs were right, so credit to them. And that should give everybody hope that he's making the right decisions, in my opinion. And see if they can string 2 together. Baz?
Yeah, and I think that's really important. A really important point you've made there is in-game management. That and he said this last night. He identified that they didn't start the second half that well, and they needed fresh legs across the pitch. And obviously, the right side of Blackburn's attack, City's left side of defence, was becoming a bit of a problem. So he made 3 changes. He put on Ryan Longman, who, by Sayers' own admission, and Ryan's own admission, to be fair as well, didn't have a great game at Preston. Wasn't in, they couldn't get him in the game. Everything was down the left as opposed to down the right. So, but he didn't have a great game. We've talked about Louis Coyle before. I don't think it's the biggest. I don't think it's that big a story. The fact that Louis was given the game out. Yes, he's the skipper, but I think that's a bigger thing than a lot of people than the reality. He brought Coyle back on, and obviously Stephen Alzate was rested because we know that he didn't have a pre-season. He was finding his feet. He got injured. He's back, and he's still finding his feet now. And to play 3 big games like that at this time of year on heavy pitches in a week was too much. So, but yeah, that was the point. The fact that his in-game reading of the situation was so good that he made those 3 changes. I mean, look, it's the life of a manager, though, isn't it? Because he made 3 changes at Preston, one of which was Chris Beddier, totally had 0 impact, and they lost the game. He makes 3 changes just before the hour, I think 58 minutes at Ewood Park. They come on and they win the game. And 2 quick points before Fletch comes in. Regan Slater's been getting a bit of stick for his lack of goals, but his pass to Longman was exceptional. He zipped it across. He got it out of his feet quickly. So without that awareness from Slater, that run and pass, that goal doesn't happen. And him and Puerta in that kind of double number 8 role that we're starting to see under Ruben is really effective. And just to answer, Bernsey, you've had a question since Ruben has come in. What does vertical football mean? What does that look like? Well, I think the goal yesterday summed it up. And again, from speaking to people that are working within Ruben's coaching setup, basically that vertical means let's get it forward as quickly as possible. Instead of playing 35 passes around our goalkeeper and then trying to go forward, if we can do that 35 passes in 2, let's do it in 2. And that's what it means. It basically means wherever possible, the next pass has to go forward. We want to progress up the pitch, and we want to do it in as few passes as possible. And we saw it with the goal, how quickly they got it forward, how quickly they opened up the channels, and they created that. As Fletch said, they created the overload on the right-hand side. So they created the moment on the right-hand side, which then freed up Longman on the left to get Longman out into space and then, created that moment. And they needed him to take it. It's not the first time they've done that. We've seen it, we've seen it before, that they'd not taken that opportunity and they did. But ultimately, that word vertical, which is a word that Ruben uses a lot, is about getting it forward as quickly as possible in as few passes as possible.
So I wonder whether that win at Blackburn then is vertical takeoff. Well, thank you, Harrier jump jet. Had a sudden image. I can only apologise for that to viewers and listeners to the 1904 Club. It's been a long year. Allow me it. I'll be better in 2025. Tony Silva says Puerta spraying the ball around back heels from Drame and Pedro. Alfie Jones flawless. He was. MJ Mart says watch the game. Blackburn had more play and shots in the first half. City a bit shaky at times, but held it together and dogged defending. Big away win, clean sheet, very tight at the bottom of the league. Need creativity and quality in front of goal, but big improvements post Tim Walter. January window is key. I agree with that. January window is key. key even.
Fine,
Have we got? Oh, yeah. Fletch, are you still sticking with the chasing 7 players?
I haven't heard anything different, but someone who's more in the know is the man sitting on my screen to my top left in a lovely lime green hoodie.
It's the Grinch.
It is.
It's the Grinch. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm back to front.
You're touching your nipples. That's what you're doing. Behave.
Oh, easy. It's not that sort of channel.
I know.
Well, not at this time of day, anyway. But yeah, I mean, if I tell you what, if on a separate note, if Swanee's listened to Peter Swan's listened to this, he's a character in it. That fella.
I was thinking exactly what you just said, Ben.
Some of the conversations we have in the press room about that subject, but I won't. I digress. And maybe that's a future podcast, but maybe like Alan's Deep Bath. Maybe we could do that with Peter Swan. But anyway, there's an idea for a show. I'll take that to Tony Hares maybe. Anyway, yeah, transfers. There's been a few developments in the last few days. Lots of talk about Carl Rushworth going back to Brighton. You know, we said on this show a couple of weeks ago that City wanted him to stay, and they do want him to stay. You know, he's back in training. He's not too far away from making a return to first team action. But ultimately, he's not played a single minute since arriving on deadline day, and Brighton have got naturally suitors, so they have the right, as any club do in the window in January, that break clause they can activate within a certain amount of time, and it's very possible they may well look to exercise that and recall Carl Rushworth, which, you know, I would be disappointed if I'm honest. I still think that he's the best goalkeeper of probably the 3 they've got, although we've not seen him in action yet, particularly in the Championship. But that said, I think Panda has really grown to the task. Of
the season for me.
He's been very good, and I think you've got Anthony Rachopi, who must be really frustrated. We said this the other day, didn't we? That he's gone from playing in the Champions League, albeit being smashed at Man City last season, to being bottom of the, you know, on the bench at Hull City, bottom of the league as they were at the time. So, and they've obviously got Cartwright and Lo Tatala in reserve thereafter. So, and we'll have to wait and see with that. But it wouldn't. Speaking to Ruben yesterday, I don't think it would be a surprise if Carl was to return to Brighton. They've also got a decision to make around Finn Burns. And again, speaking to Ruben, I get the sense that Finn Burns is one that might end. Because again, without wishing to rake over old ground, they need squad space. They haven't got any squad space as it stands. You know, those regular listeners to the 1904 Club will know we keep banging on about their need to deregister Miller, Zambrano and Bellumi, which they'll have to do. But if they can get rid of Rushworth and Finn Burns, that's 2 more spaces, and also importantly 2 loan spaces, which I think they'll look to use. I would get rid of Chris Bedia. If again, I know that's going to cost them financially because there will be a financial penalty in ending that loan early, but that hasn't worked out. And I know you say, Burnsy, that he causes a bit of chaos, but I'm not sure. You know, that was early in the season. I'm not sure there's much in that. Now, I think it's probably time to cut him loose and get somebody else to come in and replace him.
I can see that. I can absolutely see that. Fletch, you were going to make a point on the transfer window? Something about that? I'm
just going to make a point on Carl Rushworth. And it's the one transfer that I've just not understood all season, really, because when he came in, there was already Rachopi and there was Panda. And when you bring a goalkeeper in, when you're in negotiation, you never say to him, do you, unless you're a top 4 Premier League club or top 6 Premier League club, however you want to say it. You're not going to ever say, oh, do you want to come in and be number 2? Do you want to come in on loan and be a number 2 goalkeeper? You bring
if you think of the circumstances, both Pandor and Rachopi had looked wobbly early stages of the season and pre-season. Both of them, you thought, oh, blimey. Yeah. And I could absolutely understand why they went for Rushworth. It's just not worked out. But I would stand by my assertion that I think Panda's probably been the player of the season. And I wouldn't have any qualms about not having seen Rushworth, but I'm aware of his reputation going back. The player won't want to sit on the bench for the rest of the season.
No.
He might get the FA Cup game, but Rachopi's ahead of him perhaps in the queue. So do it. And as Baz says, they have to free up space on the roster. to do deals, and they've got bigger priorities than the keeper. They've got to get other players in. So
Yeah.
I personally, if he goes back to Brighton and elsewhere, then I think that's sensible all round.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that him going back is the problem. The problem that I saw with the transfer was if you were going to loan him, you have to play him straight away. And at the time, when correct me, Baz, if I'm wrong from the quote, I think the club described it as an opportunity to bring him in. And it's like it was there to be taken. Now, for me, if you see an opportunity and you've got an overstacking of players in a certain position, surely you want them in different areas of the pitch. Surely you want a crisis of having, let's say, 4 or 5 strikers who are going to sit on the bench and sulk, or sit in training and kick off and be like, why aren't I starting? Because you don't need that with a goalkeeper. Yes, you can critique a goalkeeper if they're not playing well, but as you've said, Barnsley, Pando has been the arguably the player of the season so far.
But my point is he wasn't at the time, and Rushworth would have played apart from getting that injury that ruled him out. But anyway, I think he's probably on his way. I'm conscious we're time-wise we're maybe a bit tight on this edition. What else is happening, Baz? Any names for us?
Just not at this stage, but just on the subject of Rushworth. Look, I think it was one of those that he'd been a club target for quite a while. They wanted him before, and it came to pass that he was available. And I think they looked at it and thought the way he plays Rushworth fitted with, that kind of the goalkeeper being dominant on the ball, and that suited, Walter's style as it would have done Liam's before that. The goalkeeper being front and centre of everything they do. I think that's less important now. Yes, Ruben wants the goalkeeper to be able to take the ball at his feet. Of course he does. But the goalkeeper, and if you've watched City in any of the 5 games under the new manager, you'll see that Panda isn't dominating the ball like we've seen under Liam Rosenior and then Tim Volter. So ultimately he wants his goalkeeper to keep the ball out of his net. That's the first and foremost. And if he can play out, great, which is what they do. But it's not fundamental. And so I don't think having Rushworth now is as important as it could have been. And look, Rushworth was due to start that game against Sunderland back in October, but he got injured. He did his ankle in training, and then obviously he's now, he's been out since. So that's really unfortunate. Had he have not got that injury in training on the Friday before the Sunderland game, he comes into the team. The situation and the conversation is completely different, isn't it? But that's just football. That's how it goes. Injuries have blighted their season. I wrote it last night. They had 7. I think before we crack on, it's worth mentioning at this point, they had 7 players out yesterday. That's a lot of. If you go through the team, you had Rushworth out, Charlie Hughes out, Ryan Giles out, Oscar Zambrano out, Liam Miller out, Mohamed Balloumi out, and Casey Palmer out. We can, and we have done at times this season. We've criticised the recruitment, we've criticised managers, we've criticised players for performance. But I think you also have to be fair and realistic and say, if you took that 7 players out of any team at this level, they are going to feel it. And yes, it's been staggered. They've not all been unavailable all the time, but that level of quality, particularly that level of attacking quality in Palmer and Balloumi and Miller, is going to be foul. And that is why, as we talked about the other day, that is why they're having to fudge it with, with respect, Ryan Longman playing probably more than they imagined in the summer that he would have been when they signed Miller, Balloumi and Abu Kamara. So it is, thankfully, Giles, that the prognosis on Giles is much more positive. That there's a chance that his a hamstring problem that saw him miss Blackburn and go off at half-time at Deepdale. It's hoped that he will be back for the New Year's Day game against Borough, a club that still admire him, by the way, and would love to have him back at the Riverside Stadium at some point in the near future. But I can't get away from that. And I think it is worth mentioning because we have to be fair and we have to say as it is. And I think we can criticise so many things about what the club have done in the last few months. But that is, when you look at that 7 players that Ruben was unable to call upon at Blackburn, that is a big chunk. That's over half his team. And I think we'd all agree that all those 7 players would be in that starting 11. Burnsy, is that fair?
I think so. I think that's fair. I think that's reasonable, and hopefully that'll ease somewhere along the line.
Well, it's not going to ease any time in the near future, is it?
Because no. But it comes down to the transfer window.
Yeah.
Abdush Omar, is he on his way out? Some Turkish reports suggesting 3 Turkish clubs want him. I know you said last week no. Has the situation changed, Baz?
No, I was told unequivocally by somebody that would know yesterday afternoon that report is false, that there is no truth to that report. I think it was in Fanatic, one of the Turkish media reports. Don't quote me on that. I think it was Fanatic.
Yeah.
Wide of the mark, no truth. I mean, look, let's not shy away from it. Abdush has played 30 odd games in the Championship, 36, I think, since he arrived last January. He's not scored. He's had 3 assists, and he's not been the player that we were so excited to see this time. Well, pretty much this time last year almost. I still think there is a play there. I still think in a Ruben Sayers team, City lack guile and they lack creativity in that final third. And I think we saw it at Cardiff away back over Easter when City. Remember that game that I think Norwich had won in the early kickoff, and City had been on a poor run of form, and they had to go to Cardiff and win basically to keep their season alive, and they did. And they'd got that kind of trio of Carvalho, Tufan, and Abdush, and I thought he was majestic at Cardiff, and his ability to keep the ball close, his little touches and turns around the corner, his vision, the way the fluidity with which he moves across, he glides almost. I'm really sad and disappointed that we've not seen that player that we saw glimpses of last season flourish this season. And there could be any number of reasons for that. Again, is he struggling to settle over here? The way that things have gone with the club, form. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes that we, as media and the fans, don't see. But I still think if Ruben can eke it out of him, City have got a player there that can create so much in that number 10. I know he's not playing with a 10 at the minute. He's playing with 2 8s, but in that kind of around the penalty area, his neat, deft touches and ability, and also from a dead ball situation, we saw, I think, in the game against Fiorentina. Yeah, he scored a free kick. He was able to hit the target with a free kick. We don't see that very often. So, we had one yesterday. Mason Burstow blasts it against the wall and then rattled the shot over. I really want to see something from Abdush that gives me some hope, that says something to cling on to, that maybe I'm dreaming, maybe I'm clinging to something that isn't there, and that is fine. But I still think if he stays beyond January, City have got a capable player there that can be effective in the final third if he produces, and he just needs to produce.
Fletcher, you want a word on this?
I think with Omar, I agree with you, Baz. I'd more than happily want him to stay around the club, because there's flourishes in his game, in his ability, in his creativity. I remember once speaking with Liam Rossini, who was as part of a group, and he said at the time, I think it was after Southampton, he said that what he's got at his feet and his creativity is unbelievable for this level, but we've just not seen it. And I actually think we saw glimpses of it at the end of last season. There was an opportunity for him to kick on and become a real star this year and have heavy involvement. But I just think the way that everything was ripped up and different tactical changes just completely, it was like 1 step forward, 2 steps back for him personally, I think. And he's having to rebuild all again to get some form of form going. And it doesn't appear at this point in time that Ruben Sayers, whether it be fitness, whether it be just how he's training, it doesn't look like he's the one that's being favoured at the moment, does it? Which is a shame. So if he did go, exactly, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, neither would I. And the manager's the second manager in a row not to really get him in the team and give him a run in the team. That tells you. And also, he will be a chunk on the wage bill, which sort of something I wanted to mention. I know you're going to get an expert on to do a deep dive on the club's accounts, Baz, which came out, I think it officially came out on the 24th of December to the 30th of June. I had a quick look this morning because a couple of people have sent us messages saying, mention the accounts. So these were to the 30th of June 24. Club made a loss of 18.7 million quid, which is 359 grand a week, which is not unexpected because we knew last year they were losing 500 grand a week because they were chasing the playoffs. So there's that investment there. Turnover was up. Staff costs were up 6 million quid. The auditors say there's no concerns as a going concern for the business, at least 12 months for the accounts. 32 million quid net liabilities, 66 million pounds worth of loans, which I think 44 million's to Adjan, to his media company, 22 million quid to others. But it doesn't, it doesn't include the 30 million plus that they got for Greaves and Philogene in transfer fees, which we always knew was going to happen to sort of mitigate the losses. So that'll impact this year, though they have spent some money. And probably because of those injuries you mentioned, they'll be spending more money than they anticipated this season, because the players that they're going to have to replace players that they brought in on transfers, the likes of Hughes and what have you. But I just thought I'd mention it because people will be talking about it, and I know you're trying to get somebody to give us some clarity on it, Baz. But 359 grand a week. Welcome to the Championship, which is why it's so important that they stay up. So important, because I think you lose about 60-70% of your revenue if you go down. So financially, they have to stay up. And yesterday's win over Blackburn gives us a bit of hope there. Baz, you were going to make a point.
Yeah, why Fletcher's? Because I know Fletcher's got some knowledge on far more than my abacus stretches to. So while he's mulling that over, look, I think relegation would be a disaster for the football club. It would not only would it mean massive reductions in the playing budget, it would also be a disaster for a lot of the staff behind the scenes who would inevitably lose their jobs, and that's what we see at clubs up and down the country when you get relegated from the Premier League to the Championship and the Championship to League One, because some of your revenue drops, but not massively from the Championship to League One. But for City, it would be disastrous. So it can't happen. It can't be allowed to happen. And as you say, Burns, results like winning at Blackburn go a long way to making sure it doesn't happen. But they're still, we're now into the second half of the season. We've got less games. We've played 24 games. The games are running out, and as is time. So they need to make sure that doesn't happen. But those figures are staggering. They are hugely concerning. I think you can't get away from the fact that the club, since Adjan has bought the club, they've invested heavily, yes, but they've spent an awful lot of money. And yes, the auditors say as a going concern they've got no concerns, but I think any Championship club that is spending that amount of money effectively per week, you have to have worries, because there's only so long that somebody, and Adjan is his business is successful, is making money, and he's a wealthy guy. But that is significant wealth that you need just to sustain it. And we talked about this time last year when we had Kieran Maguire on. Essentially, Adjan is having to write a check for that amount of money every Friday afternoon. I know in reality it doesn't work like that, and I'm being simplistic. But when you strip it all back, that's basically, in a nutshell, what is happening. I struggle to write a check for 30 quid. So it's just, let alone 300 grand. It's you just can't comprehend that type of money. And that's, yes, as you say, Burnsy, and that's a fair point, and it's worth mentioning that these figures do not include Jayden Philogene going and Jacob Greaves going and the salaries and Mika Seri's salary and Ozan Tufan's salary and a little bit of peppercorn rent, but the little bit of money they'd have got for Ozan Tufan and one or two other players that have gone off the wage bill. But conversely, they've signed a lot of players. So whilst the accounts, if you did them today, would probably look a little bit healthier because of the Philogene and Greavesy money and Tufan and Seri, but that would also be impacted that you've spent money on Liam Miller, Balumi, Charlie Hughes, Abu Kamara. I can't imagine João Pedro's coming over here on a couple of grand a week. He'll be on a decent salary, so that, and they will invest again in January. So the balancing act between making Hull City viable and also competitive is a really challenging one, whilst remaining firmly within financial fair play or profit and sustainability or whatever you want to call it. It's a really hard balance. And City, as we've said before, their ticket prices are relatively low for the standard of football. The gates aren't huge. The gates have gone up massively, and that's great credit to the football club and the supporters who have backed the ownership in the last 3 years. But they're still not. And yes, revenue's gone up and sponsorship has gone up. I think the McVitie's deal that crumbling and then being replaced by Safi Port, I don't think has hit the club financially. I think that both deals are on a fairly level playing field in terms of what they bring in. But you can't get away from the fact that they've got a lot of that those figures are a big concern and they have to be managed. And what that means for the club going forward, well, I don't know, because it's not, football finance is not my area of expertise. There are people out there like Kieran Maguire. I know Swiss Ramble's done a really good expose on it. Fletch, I know you're going to come in. We've got people within our business that are looking at the figures. I mean, it's come out during a bit of an awkward time with people on holidays and stuff, but it is what it is. Yeah, go on, Fletch.
Well, just read those figures again for me, Barnsley, just so the listeners, if you didn't hear it the first time, just give a picture of all it, because the reason I ask that is there's so many different areas to a football club, isn't there? You've got your commercial side, your transfer side, you've got your natural incomings, your natural expenditures, just on things like everyone pays, like things like your water, your utilities. So just for those, just say those figures again, Barnsley.
So they made this is to June 24, to the end of June 24. They made a £18.7 million loss. So if divide that by 52, you're looking at 359 grand a week is what the owner has invested in to try and get the team into the Premier League, got close to the playoffs. Turnover was up. Yeah, sure.
But just quickly, because Kieran, obviously friend of the show, Kieran Maguire from the Football Finance Pod has put a really good tweet thread out on Twitter, if you can go and read it. And one of the things I'm just looking now, as a result of the finances, wages now amount to £139 for every 100. Sorry, I'll start that again. As a result, wages are now £139 for every £100 of revenue. As a result of this, Hull City lost £500,000 a week in the running of the club. It's the highest in the club's history. Only way to cover losses is via player sales or owner funding. Hull had a negative net spending in 23-24, but still invested highly by Championship standards. Kieran Maguire will hopefully get him on a pod in the not too distant future. We had him on last year. Kieran knows his onions, and he will be able to explain from his point of view what this means for City. But I don't think I genuinely don't think there's any City fan that could look at those figures and go, "Oh, that's all fine. That's nothing to worry, nothing to see here." That they are not great figures, Burnsy. So I just wanted to interject about that.
Yeah. Okay, but the staff costs are up £6 million in the year. 20 more staff on the books of the club in that year. So they owe the net liabilities, Fletcher, 32 million quid. Okay, they've got 66 million quid's worth of loans, 44 million quid to Adrian, 22 million quid elsewhere in borrowings. So that's where it is. I mean, finances in every business is always hugely important, and Kieran will know more. But I'm going to stick with that. While they're spending 500 grand a week, they're losing 359 grand a week in that year. But we always knew they would have to sell Philogene and Greaves and make adjustments. So that I think is relevant for the overall sort of club, but also relevant to this January transfer window. That they're going to have to be canny, and as Baz says, with the football finance regulations, whatever they are, that they need a top transfer window.
They do,
but it's January's always traditionally a really difficult transfer window, and the financial situation. They're going to have to move very cleverly in this transfer window to make it work. And of course, all this helped by a win at Blackburn, and if they can turn Middlesbrough over on New Year's Day, and I know Middlesbrough are up there, but they're doable. Middlesbrough, I think. If they can string two performances together, it gives you a lot of hope.
What I'll say on finances, just to add, because we need a full pod to really digest what's going on. But I think one thing I will say is when you look at figures and they're published, and so take, for example, the transfers, and you mentioned there about £30 million for Greaves and Philogene isn't included. I think what's important to stress to supporters is that we don't know with full clarity how those payments are structured. For example, if you buy a car, you might pay for it monthly. And if you say you've bought a player for £5 million, it might be that it's paid over 5 years, it's paid over 2 years, and all that gets muddled into all these different situations. So within each month or within each quarter, you might have a situation where a big chunk of money comes out and then a little comes in, and vice versa, and the numbers can change. That doesn't hide away the fact that the running cost week to week is staggering. The 44 million to Adjun in loans, I imagine, unless you can correct me on this, Baz, that's money that can be floated about and batted about, because if it's his own money, i.e. paid to him in loans.
Well, I don't think that's the thing. One thing that's hidden well away in these accounts, I think, is the interest rate that on the loans. That I think it's 5.8%, which is quite high for what you'd call soft loans. I think from what I've read, so that could mean that obviously Adjun or Adjun Media is borrowing the money from somewhere else, and so all they're doing is passing that interest rate on to Hull City. So it's not like Adjun's got £100 million in his bank account and he's loaned it to Hull City, and he's ripping 5%. He's making 5% back himself. I'm 99.
We have to be gentle, don't we?
I don't believe that to be the case. I would read that as a bank in outer space are loaning Adjun Media the money to loan to Hull City, and that is where that finance is. That's where that 5.8% interest is being accrued, because that is quite high, unusually high from what I understand. So, and my understanding is admittedly, this isn't, give me football on the football field, fine. I'm not finance. That's not my area. But that's what I gather.
Yeah. So in summary, I think it's important to stress that when you look at all these figures together, some of it is broken down into fine individual pieces which can alter and factor, which is maybe why they've come out and said in the next 12 months it isn't a serious going concern, but it could be one that's coming down the track unless things change. And that could be the same with the January transfer window, Burnsy. You could have, for example, a player leave, but you might want a player for £3 million, £4 million. That club might not turn around and go, well, there you go, then we'll just write you a check. It might take 3-4 years to pay off.
In fairness, the auditors, if you read the auditors' report, they've not raised any concerns about the running the club. It's a going concern, and I think that's important. It's just when you look at these figures, you think, blimey, that's a lot of money. And this club has a history of getting itself into financial trouble from time to time. So you just got to worry about it. I'll keep an eye on it. Is what essentially I think most people would.
I think you have to be. I don't think you cannot see those figures and not be concerned for things, because they are staggeringly high. And Hull City aren't. They don't. As I said before, they don't make a huge amount of money. They're exploring. The work they do with the retail arm of it, the corporate arm is phenomenal. And they're maximizing every avenue they possibly can to try and make money as a club, and I respect that, and they do a phenomenal job. Joe and everybody at the club do great work, but it's underpinned by just the ultimately it's the football side of the business that always is the drain on any owner or any football club, and that is the case here. You look at this, staff costs have gone up, and that is something they'll have to look at. Can Hull City carry a staff base as big as they've got? But I think it is the Championship. I think it's not just Hull. Look, the figures are all at it. Yeah, the figures are hugely worrying, and I can't not be concerned when I see those figures, and I worry. And to say that it'll all be all right in a year's time because the Philogene and Greaves money will be in the accounts, I think is a fallacy. I don't think that's. I think that's pie in the sky, because you don't know how they've structured the deals in terms of the advance. A lot of clubs advance money, so a lot of clubs, will sell a player for £20 million, but instead of having that £20 million paid to them over the duration of a contract, of a 5-year contract, they will advance some of that money quickly so they can spend it now. So they might, I'm not saying Hull City have done this, but some clubs will say, right, okay, we've sold a player for 20 million, we want to advance that, and they will get that 20 million, or they'll get a big percentage of that up front, but that will cost them. And then obviously they get it up front now, they haven't got it over the duration of the contract. So they don't have it to look forward to in January and then April and then September, depending on how the structure of that deal works. So that is something to factor in the accounts as well. So it's not like the simplistic is, oh well, next year's accounts will have 20 million from Jacob Greaves and 20 million from Jaden Philogene going in, and we'll suddenly be 38 to 40 million pounds better off, and everything will look fantastic. And this year's figures will suddenly, be kind of null and void because everything looks fine. That isn't how it is going to work. So if you're a Hull City fan holding on to hope that next year's accounts will suddenly be amazing, I can tell you now that isn't going to be the case, because that isn't how football clubs' finances work. And yeah, it's terrifying. The Championship is terrifying. Hull City's figures are terrifying, and they've blown my mind. But they are not the only football club, and I know that they're one of the first to publish their accounts. I know Reading have not even published their last year's accounts yet, but they are one of the first. They're going to be one of the worst, I would imagine, comparatively. But the Championship is it blows your mind, the finances and the losses. I don't know. I just don't. I genuinely don't know how football clubs survive day to day and pay their way.
Well, at least there's a football manager who's been in a club that's had that financial catastrophe in Ruben Sayers at Reading.
Yeah. Right. Time is going to evade us, unfortunately. Funnily enough, I'm off to see a pantomime, which is no jokes. No jokes. Go on. Get it out of the way.
Who are you playing?
Well, Prutz, I'm joining. Prutz is the big Dame.
That's your dream.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, we're going to call it a day there. We will have a proper in-depth look at the City finances in the not too distant future. But at least we've got 3 points in the bag. We can reflect on a big win at Blackburn on what day was it? Sunday. That was right. Yeah, Sunday. And then 2 games to start the new year. Middlesbrough, I think, have drawn the last 3. They drew 0-0 with Burnley last night. Then obviously the small matter of Leeds United. But let's forget Leeds. It's all about Middlesbrough on New Year's Day. So all that's left for me to say on this episode of the 1904 Club is, well, we all wish you a very, very happy New Year. Here's hoping that 2025 is better for Hull City than 2024 was. Burnsy, any parting comments before we head off into the sunset?
Well, can they on the seesaw make sure the fat lad like me is down on the bottom and the lighter one is up near the top? Middlesbrough drawn the last 3, 1 win in 6, and not one in the last 3 away. So that gives you a bit of hope. So whatever you're doing for New Year, enjoy it, and enjoy the game on Wednesday.
Fletch?
Yeah. Listen to grumpy old Jeff, and he said in one message that just popped up and said, glad we're not farting and faffing about at the back anymore. So if they play like that, I think they'll do all right.
No. A fitting way to end it. Happy New Year, everybody. As always, thank you very much for your support throughout the year. Your comments, your likes, everything else. Keep doing that, and we'll keep bringing you the pod. So happy New Year from everybody, including Prutz at the 1904 Club, and we will see you again soon.